Has modern television crossed the line from being bold to being completely excessive? Well then, you won't believe what happened at London's Globe Theatre back in the 1600s. Throughout this reading passage, you'll explore how wild audiences, fierce critics, and a government crackdown led to one man's mission to bring it all back. It starts by describing what the original Globe Theatre was like in the early 1600s. It goes on to illustrate that it wasn't just a stage, it was a place where social classes mixed. You'll read about groundlings who stood in an area called the pit, rambunctious crowds that threw rotten food, and even how aristocrats and commoners experienced plays differently. You can find the complete passage linked in the description below. It includes 5 multiple-choice questions that test your critical thinking, and a section where you can write a brief summary. Finally, you can hold down your left control button on your keyboard and use your mouse wheel or trackpad to alter the size of the text so that it is more comfortable for your eyes. Before we break down each paragraph within the passage, we'll take a look at some important vocabulary. I put this vocabulary list together to help you unlock the meaning of the text. Well, what do I mean by unlocking the meaning of the text? Well, learning vocabulary in context like this helps you to form relationships with the words, and improves not just your reading, but also your writing and speaking skills. The more you understand the words, the more clearly you'll grasp the deeper messages in the passage, such as the themes or the author's intent. We start in London around the year 1600. The Globe Theatre wasn't just a place to watch plays. It was a lightning rod for controversy. While some adored the thrilling performances, others saw theatre as dangerous and immoral. Built along the edge of the city, the Globe Theatre drew noisy crowds and even hosted William Shakespeare himself. Now, let's take a look at the vocabulary for this paragraph. Feel free to pause the video now to allow you the time to preview the language used. Now that we have reviewed the vocabulary we may need for the paragraph, let's begin. Do you laugh and gape at the ridiculous antics of reality TV show stars? Chances are you would have done more than that at a performance at the Globe Theatre circa 1600. Today's dubious celebrities have nothing on the old Globe's daring actors and their raucous, rowdy audiences. In Elizabethan London, many in the ruling class viewed theatrical productions as dangerous. They thought theatres and the actors themselves threatened the common good. That's why theatres were banished to the city's seedier neighbourhoods. Built on the south banks of the River Thames in 1599, the Globe was one of the more famous theatres of its day. It was part owned by William Shakespeare, and aristocrats and commoners alike came to see his plays. If those playgoers were lucky, they might also see Shakespeare himself. Inside the Globe, things were wild. Up to 3,000 people packed the theatre. The cheapest tickets got you into the pit, where rowdy audience members shouted and threw food. Everyone stood, and they were loud. The actors, all men, had to play both male and female roles while dodging insults and vegetables. Now, let's take a look at the vocabulary for this paragraph. Feel free to pause the video now to allow you the time to preview the language used. Now that we have reviewed the vocabulary we may need for the paragraph, let's begin. Now, let's see how the passage describes this scene. The open-roof globe could hold up to 3,000 people. At the base of the apron stage, a raised platform with the audience on three sides, there was a pit where people called groundlings would stand and watch the play for a penny. Those who paid slightly more to sit in the stadium-styled seats had to tread warily or risk falling into the pit. The actors were almost always men, playing both male and female parts. Audience members were both unkempt and unruly, so actors had to endure the insults, taunts, and jibes of the rambunctious crowd and often had to dodge the rotten produce hurled at them. But then came the Puritans, strict religious leaders who believed theatre was corrupt and immoral. In 1642, they convinced Parliament to shut every London theatre down. The actors were punished, the globe was dismantled, and the stage went silent. Now, let's take a look at the vocabulary for this paragraph. Feel free to pause the video now to allow you the time to preview the language used. Now that we have reviewed the vocabulary we may need for the paragraph, let's begin. Here's how the passage puts it. The globe continued to thrive even after Shakespeare's death in 1616. It remained a lively and exciting place, but the dour, stolid Puritans in power disapproved of play acting. Their strict, joyless views on life contrasted with the globe's opulent, rollicking productions, which were considered insidious and corrupting. So in 1642, Parliament ordered the Globe and all other London theatres closed. Constables were deployed to enforce the rule, actors were punished and even jailed, and anyone caught attending a play was fined. The building was dismantled, and those long-ago theatre lovers were left bereft. Centuries later, an American named Sam Wanamaker visited London and was shocked to find only a sad plaque marking where the Globe once stood. He launched a global campaign to rebuild it. Some critics scoffed at the idea, but Wanamaker kept going, and a new Globe Theatre finally opened in 1997. Now, let's take a look at the vocabulary for this paragraph. Feel free to pause the video now to allow you the time to preview the language used. Now that we have reviewed the vocabulary we may need for the paragraph, let's begin. Let's read exactly how that effort is described in the passage. More than 3 centuries later, the American actor and director Sam Wanamaker went looking for the remains of this historic theatre. He was appalled to find only a drab plaque that read, "This is on or around where Shakespeare had his Globe." Wanamaker started the Shakespeare Globe Trust in 1970 to raise funds to rebuild Shakespeare's historic theatre. Not everyone was convinced of his vision. Early support was tentative. What some called a replica of the Globe, others dismissed as a theme park that would adulterate Shakespeare's legacy. But Wanamaker's fortitude and perseverance paid off. in 1997, Shakespeare's Globe officially opened. Today, the new Globe is alive with performances. Shakespeare's plays are performed just like they were 400 years ago. Now, let's take a look at the vocabulary for this paragraph. Feel free to pause the video now to allow you the time to preview the language used. Now that we have reviewed the vocabulary we may need for the paragraph, let's begin. The passage ends with a powerful connection between past and present. Let's read it together. Today, the new Globe plays to packed houses. While most seasons emphasize the works of Shakespeare, often performed verbatim, contemporary plays are also featured. The bard, too cool for his love of mischief, might have approved of a recent production of Much Ado About Nothing, featuring an all-female cast in the guise of princes, fools, and soldiers. Shakespeare's Globe transports us back to the experience of theatre as it was 400 years ago. Now that we've completed the passage, we'll move on to some multiple choice questions. These will not be answered to allow you to complete the exercise yourself, which is linked in the description below. Don't worry about wondering if you got the right answer or not. Each question is programmed to accept the correct answer only. Let's quickly go through the navigation tools. We have the back button here that takes us to the previous page. We have the next button here that takes us to the next question. And we have the skip button here, which is the one with the circle around it. It will allow you to skip over any questions you may have already answered if you need to go back and reread the passage. This first question asks what we can infer about how society viewed theatres during Elizabethan times. That means looking at what's suggested in the text, even if it's not directly stated. You'll need to combine clues about how theatres were seen as dangerous, disruptive, or even linked to crime, and how different classes reacted to them. This helps build your inference skills, a key reading strategy that lets you think beyond the surface and understand deeper meaning in a text. This question explores why the groundlings, who paid the least, might have chosen to stand in the pit, even though it wasn't comfortable. To answer it, you'll need to consider details from the passage and how the audience was arranged and how social class affected their experience. It's a chance to think critically about how space, status, and accessibility played into the theatre-going experience. This builds your understanding of historical context and sharpens your ability to explain character or group motivations in non-fiction. Next up, what does the rebuilding of the Globe Theatre tell us about how people today view Shakespeare? This question pushes you to think thematically. What does it mean that someone works so hard to bring back this theatre? What does it say about the value we place on art, culture, and legacy? Here, you're learning to interpret actions as events as symbols of belief. It's a powerful skill for analyzing nonfiction and history alike. This question zooms in on the man who made it all happen, Sam Wanamaker. You're being asked to analyze how he's portrayed in the passage. Does the author make him seem brave, persistent, uncertain? You'll need to use textual evidence to decide. This is character analysis in nonfiction, a key reading skill that helps you evaluate real people's choices and understand the writer's point of view. And finally, this question looks at juxtaposition, which means comparing two things side by side to show contrast. The passage compares audiences from 400 years ago to today. Are they louder, more respectful? By thinking about this contrast, you'll understand how theater has changed, and also what stayed the same. This builds your ability to recognize how authors use structure and comparison to make a deeper point. Our last section is where you can practice your ability to summarize what you have read. My suggestion is to think about the main points of the passage and to consider reflecting on the content of the multiple choice questions. Here, you can type your summary into the text box provided. When you are finished, hit the Submit button and another button will appear. This button allows you to see an example answer so that you can compare your writing with a sample. Next, read all the way down to where a Continue button will take you to the final page. In this lesson, we explored the evolution of the Globe Theatre, from its rowdy beginnings to its closure and eventual rebirth. Along the way, we practiced skills that go beyond just reading. We built our vocabulary, sharpened our ability to infer and analyze, and finally examined how cultural values shift over time. By comparing past and present, we gain insights into how performance, politics, and people interact across centuries. Thank you for reading with me. Be sure to like, subscribe, or both to let me know if you would like to see more of this material. See you next time.